So what we're going to be talking about today is the central nervous system, or the nervous system. All right, so we have our nervous system, okay? We have our nervous system, and there's two parts to the nervous system. The first part is called the central nervous system. All right, and so in the central nervous system, it's made up of, the central nervous system is made up of two parts: the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, so there's the two parts of the central nervous system. Everything else in your body, like my arms, my chest, my back, everything else in my body is innervated or gets nerve supply from the peripheral nervous system, which is the second one, the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so that's the second one that we have, is the peripheral nervous system. So we're going to be talking about the central nervous system right now, because in the central nervous system you have something called meninges. Okay, they're called meninges, and what meninges are is they're coverings that go around the brain and around the spinal cord. So the meninges are the protective coverings. They're protective coverings around the brain and spinal cord. Okay? And there's actually three layers to this. There's actually three layers of meninges. So we don't see meninges in the peripheral nervous system. We only see meninges in the central nervous system. So let's go ahead and take a look at these real fast. And so what it's going to look like is, once again, if I were to take a person, all right, here's a person, and their spinal cord goes all the way down their back, pretty much down through their back, basically to the low back. And if I wanted to see what the meninges look like, let's say that I were to cut off right here. Okay, so I cut that off, and then let's say now what you want to do is you want to look down into the spinal cord here. And again, this is going to go for the brain. It's just easier for me to show it around the spinal cord. So like we said, there's three layers. So what we're going to start with is the inner layer, or not the inner layer, but we have our spinal cord. So now you're looking down at the spinal cord. If I were to lean forward and you cut me in half and you were to look down and you look at the spinal cord. So the first layer is actually the thinnest layer, and it is called the Piamata. So this is going to be called the Piamata. All right, and what Piamata stands for is it stands for delicate mother. So this is my delicate mother. It's the thinnest layer too. Okay, so there's my delicate mother. It's the thinnest layer. And it's the innermost layer. Okay, it's the innermost layer too. Okay, so again, and then just once again, your spinal cord is made up of nerves. So we have that layer there. Now, the next layer is what we call the arachnoid. Now, arachnoid stands for spidery. So if you ever heard of like arachnophobia, it's the fear of spiders. In this case, we have the next layer, which is the arachnoid. Okay, So there's my arachnoid. Okay, there's the arachnoid. So this is the spidery layer. Okay, it's kind of flexible. Now, if you notice, you also have a space that's in here. This is called the subarachnoid space because it's under the arachnoid. So it's called the subarachnoid space. And in the subarachnoid space, you actually have a fluid called cerebral spinal fluid. And I'll just write this right here. It's called cerebral spinal fluid, or it's also known as CSF. Okay, it's also known as CSF, cerebral spinal fluid. So what does cerebral spinal fluid do? Well, what cerebral spinal fluid does, CSF, is it basically nourishes and I think I spelt that wrong. But what it's going to do is it's going to nourish and lubricate the meninges. Okay? Now, the other thing is you make about 100 to 160 millimeters of this every 8 hours. You make about 100 to 160 millimeters every 8 hours. That means that every 8 hours you've basically replaced all the cerebral spinal fluid in your body, about every 8 hours. Okay, so there's where your cerebral spinal fluid is. And then the last layer is known as the Dura Mata. This is the outer thickest layer. This is the Dura Mata. So, again, it's the outer thickest layer. Okay? And Dura Mata, if you remember, over here we had Piamata, which was delicate mother. Dura Mata stands for tough mother because it's very hard. It's very protective. Okay? And so there, let's review. We had two parts of the nervous system. We had the central nervous system and we had the peripheral nervous system. And then in the central nervous system, we had two parts to it, the brain and the spinal cord. And then we said the brain and the spinal cord are covered by meninges. They're covered by meninges. And there was 3 layers to meninges. So we have the central nervous system with two parts, the brain and spinal cord, and then they're covered by 3 layers. So the 3 layers, again, were the Dura Mata, which was the tough mother, the outer thickest layer, the arachnoid, which was the spidery layer that's in the middle. Below the arachnoid, but above the Piamata, we have the subarachnoid space, and that contains cerebral spinal fluid, which basically nourishes and lubricates the meninges. Oops. And we make between 100 and 160 milliliters of this every 8 hours. And then on the inside, we had the thinnest layer, that little black line there, which is known as the Piamata. And just so you know, this is all Dura Mata here. Okay, I don't mean it just to be that little red line. So this would be all Dura Mata. Okay, so there is my 2 parts of the nervous system and my meninges.